we are all here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, wait, who's missing? 1, 2, 3, 4.
We're all here, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, and Tim, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. So we're all here. So I would like to call to order the South Burlington City Council meeting of Monday, November 2nd, 2020, and welcome everyone to once again an electronic meeting. First item of action really is the agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items? Tom?
Just one other business item. I'd love to spend just a couple of minutes recognizing a question raised at the last meeting about open meeting law concern. And it was covered in the other paper. So I'd appreciate if we could just raise that topic to adequately address it based on some residents that have reached out to me.
Okay, so we'd add that to at the end of the agenda. Okay. Any other items to add or delete or change? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to, are there any comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda? And I don't see anyone showing their face or raising their hand, so we'll move on to announcements and the city manager's report. So, Megan, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
Okay, Tim?
We had a pension advisory board meeting last week, I think it is, and things that had improved in the previous quarter. Of course, the day that we got the report was a crash day for the market. So right. I don't have a good summary to give you right away. I'll save that for the next meeting and tell you what all the facts are, unless Tom wants to do that. But if it can wait, I'll wait till next time.
Okay. Unless Tom Hubbard, you want to share something, or we can wait. I mean, is anyone in a hot sweat? Who knows what the market will do after tomorrow?
Yeah, I think Tim's right. We'll have Patrick Blizzard with us at the next meeting. He'll be giving the annual update to the council anyway. So probably be a better point then to discuss.
Okay, great. Let's see, Dave Coffin?
I'm all set.
Okay, Tom Chittenden?
Nothing to report.
Okay, I attended the Airport Commission meeting, and I'll tell you about that when we get to our committee assignment, item 6. I did also attend a press conference in Winooski that was announcing an agreement between Vermont Gas Systems and the city of Burlington to provide the $500,000 10% match for the noise mitigation program. It's not a done deal. It's not a signed agreement because I think they have to go before the regulatory board to get the okay, because $500,000 is a lot of money. But they were very excited. One of our residents, Neil Lunderville, as you know, is the new CEO, and he was, and as you know, our energy committee has been very interested in seeing if that collaboration around weatherization and energy savings and energy, what is it called, efficiency Vermont, could really work with the owners of homes that are undergoing sound mitigation processes and stuff. So it was an announcement of that, although it isn't absolutely firmed up. Tim?
Wasn't there some question the last time we discussed this about whether the FAA would accept something like that as the source of the income, the source of the 10%?
And my understanding is they're willing to do that.
Great.
So that's very helpful, and I think it helps Vermont Gas Systems and Efficiency Vermont and all that kind of, all those efforts that they support. So we'll see what happens and see if the public service, it's not the Public Service Board, it has a new name, right?
The Public Utility Commission.
Oh, okay. Agrees to the use of that money. So, and then what else did I do? I went to the airport. Okay, I think, and I met with, not over the phone, but over the computer with Jesse Foran, the editor of the other paper. And I sent out an email and asked who wanted to write the first Councilors Corner. No one took me up on that offer, so I'm doing it, which is fine. I just wanted to give people an opportunity. So that's due tomorrow. So I will write that. And I also, Tim, since you're working the polls, I thought it would be fun to you and I collaborate on a different article that talks about our experience at the polls Tuesday, and sort of our perspective as all the work that we've done and what it felt like. And I don't know, maybe Tom, you want to contribute just as a candidate. It was a weird season for sure, but that would be another article, not the Counselor Corner. So I will assign them in the next, it's the first week, I think. It's due tomorrow, so I think it goes in the next newspaper, and she wanted to assure me that they were happy to reinstitute that, and I was glad they were doing that, and it seems that we'll move forward in a positive way with the other paper. And I think just looking at the last, the most recent edition, it really was full of more like the one before COVID that had a lot more articles and things that were of direct interest to South Burlington, as well as highlighting some of our residents. And Jessie did also say that she thought that every town should have a newsletter like we've developed, and that's a wonderful way to include and connect with the public about the different activities of the city in ways that a newspaper doesn't necessarily do, because unless it's a story, they really don't want to just report on stuff that happens. So I think we've met a really sweet spot with, I thought the last edition of our newsletter was excellent. It really filled in a lot of different articles with great connections to all the information on the website. So I think that's our residents will be well informed going forward. That's all I have. Yes, Tim?
I took the opportunity to respond directly to a person that posted on Front Porch Forum. I don't remember which forum it was, who was really disgruntled about receiving the other paper and wanted to stop, the delivery of this paper.
Right.
So
Yes.
I just emailed them and very gently said, here's some very short history about what's been going on. There's a lot of junk mail that you get that goes in the recycle bucket, but, take a second look at the other paper, and things are going to change as, the pandemic ebbs and flows and the economy improves or whatever, things are going to change for the better, I think. So just, don't be so dismissive.
Good, thanks. Thank heavens we have recycling bins too. Well, you don't have to stuff it in the garbage or wrap your fish in it or whatever. Okay. City managers report.
Yeah, just a couple of things, Helen. I know you all have a busy week this week, but a reminder that the steering committee will meet next Monday night, the 9th at 7 p.m. We're certainly wishing Donna and all the city clerk staff a good day for tomorrow. They've been working really hard. They've done a great job with the election, with voting. Appreciate all the help from the members of the council to assist in her office, and prepare for the counting the votes and everything that you're doing, all of the BCA and all of the other folks who've assisted in any way. It's taken a lot of hands this year, and we appreciate the help. When Kevin's back next week, we'll begin meeting with department managers to talk about next year's capital improvement plan. So those meetings are being set up for next week now. And lastly, just want to pass along some news from the Recreation and Parks Department. Holly shares that the Halloween Glow Walk that was held over on Market Street last weekend brought in over 400 people. A lot of them folks living right within the area and others living throughout the city, but they had a great night. It was held near the Goose Pond. And there was plenty of room there for people to socially distance and keep apart. And I'm hoping that we'll begin to see a host of new and creative community engagement programs over there in the future for all seasons. So congratulations to Holly and her group, but a very successful event over there on Market Street last weekend. So.
Yeah, no, I saw the little tent, and I also walked by and peeked in the windows of the library, and they're starting to sheetrock. So it's really starting to look like an identifiable building outside, of course, and then inside. So that's pretty exciting too.
Coming along.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom. The consent agenda, we have 5 items: disbursements, an application for the design and construction of Airport Drive infiltration system to approve a grant application, approve a stormwater improvement agreement with Grandview and Southridge Homeowners Association, approve the stormwater systems maintenance agreement. We're doing a lot with stormwater with South Village. And lastly, approve and authorize the city manager to execute a quitclaim easement deed on Queen City Park and Green Mountain Drive right-of-ways for State Route 7 traffic signal replacement project. So I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay, Megan moved approval. Is there a second?
Second.
And David seconded. Is there any discussion? Tim? We can't hear you, Tim.
Sorry. I just want to compliment Justin and his team for adjusting some traffic signal timings on where Williston Road hits Dorset because of some feedback from a resident. And that resident replied back in Front Porch Forum, I think, that he's very pleased with the change in the increase in the productivity of the flow of traffic going through that intersection where the interstate comes into next to the CVS, I believe. Justin, is that where it was?
I'll take the credit. I have no idea what the feedback was. Sometimes things are just in motion. So I don't know what the precipitating event is that you're referring to in terms of this feedback or resident. But we recently have brought some repairs to our Dorset Street signals, and one of those repairs allowed us to cut a lot of dead time out of the particular phase, but it was that way due to a mechanical failure.
That's great that you made the repair. I mean, he's very happy, and we all are, because it increases the efficiency of the intersection. Thank you.
Oh,
go ahead with a vote, please.
Are there any other discussion? Okay, if you're ready for the vote, I'll call the roll. Megan Emery?
Aye.
Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
David Kaufman?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so we approve the consent agenda as presented 5-0. Next are reports from councilors on committee assignments. Tim, your committee assignment, you're going to wait on that. I have a little news from the Airport Commission, and did anyone else have a meeting? The transit or anything? Okay, so I just thought it was important to note that the CARES Act grant that the airport received for $8.7 million is really making the difference for them to allow them to meet their expenditures. They have drawn down, I think, $1 million or $2 million. No, $1,553,000 to cover July and August. And, you know, without that, they would be in really bad shape. The revenue changes for them, I mean, it's really down, are due to parking fees, which is no surprise because very few people are flying, so no one is parking there. Nor are people, that's an $841,000 cut or reduction in revenues. The car rental concessions is another $576,000. And then there's landing fees. And so thankfully they got that CARES money and it can be carried over into the next fiscal year to continue to pay down or pay their expenses. I mean, at the same time, they're trying to run a very tight budget and have been cutting where appropriate and possible. Year-to-date expenses, and of course they're on the federal schedule, is approximately $125,000 lower than the previous year. And they continue to go forward with different projects and receive money from the FAA to do different things. And then, of course, you all know they owe the FAA money back for the 7 Kirby Cottages properties. And I don't have that number, I'm sorry. I thought it was on this sheet and I didn't write it down because I thought it was on this handout. But that's kind of where they are. And, you know, they're working hard to keep the place clean, and they haven't lost any airlines, which is good, and have had a ton of, ooh, sorry, that's my dog. Ted must be coming home. Of corporate jets flying in, just a really huge number. So a lot of people are flying in here, but just on private jets. There's any other questions that I can get answered? Okay. Thank you. So let's move on to item 7. Consider and possibly approve a resolution establishing the zoning administrator fee schedule for ticketing of land development regulation violations. And is Paul Connor going to talk about that? Oh yeah, there you are. I'm sorry.
Hi, Helen. Yes, certainly. So if you recall earlier this fall, Andrew Baldock and I had come in to talk with you about some additional tools in the toolbox, you know, having reflected on some of the events from this summer. And the first of those tools that we were going to recommend was to take advantage of state statute that allows us to have a second option for enforcement of our zoning regulations. So the main method that we use is through the environmental court, which is a process that is slow, but it results in actual physical changes. So let's say somebody built a building that was 30 feet too tall. The court has the authority under the normal procedures to require that the building come into compliance. The ticketing authority is a whole different tool. It brings it much more like a speeding ticket or a sign ordinance ticket or one of those ones, where it's used for typically more operational type things that happen, that's a violation in the moment. And it allows us to issue a ticket right away. There are limitations on it. It can only be up to $800 a day. It's a ticket. It's not a injunctive relief on the activity. But we think that this would be a good additional tool to have in the toolbox from time to time for these kinds of operational things.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments, discussion? Tim?
Yeah, so these penalties didn't exist before, or they weren't well codified?
So state statute automatically allows for a regulation to be ticketed, but we did not, there was no fee schedule adopted by the council previously. And so we didn't feel that it was appropriate to use it without having a resolution establishing a formal fee schedule from you all. So we've not used it in the past.
And how do these fees compare to, let's say, Burlington or Winooski?
The statutes for any type of ticketing set a maximum of $800 per day. What the draft here does is it reaches up to 800 by the 5th offense, which is consistent with how we do all of our ordinances. It sort of increases the severity rather than just having the first time that somebody's out there saying $800. So I'm not sure how it compares with other municipalities, but it does go up to the maximum allowed under state law, and it's consistent with the ramping that we do with our other various tickets.
But do you know if other towns or cities do have these penalties?
Yes, I couldn't tell you exactly who, but I have spoken with others who have used them in the past. Different municipalities have different things in their regulations. So some towns have their sign regulations inside of their zoning. That's the most common use of it. We have it as a separate ordinance. If you'd like, I'm happy to poll all of our neighbors and find out who does it. Yeah.
Can you give us a hypothetical situation where you would want to have levied these penalties?
Sure. So they're typically, they're things, as I said, that are more operational in nature. So let me give you a couple of examples of things that we've seen in recent years. With the advent of LED lights, it's a lot easier to have a parking lot's lighting, or let's say a gas station's lighting, be much higher than it's supposed to be. Basically, you set a programming and it doubles its lighting because the LED lights are just, the manufacturer builds at a certain amount and then they dial it back to meet our regulations. So that could be the kind of thing where, for whatever reason, lighting is too high, rather than going through a lengthy process through the environmental court. That could be something where we'd issue a warning and then we could issue a ticket. And for each day that they keep the lights on, it's a ticket. That would be a faster and more effective way of enforcing it, rather than saying you've got 7 days to cure the violation, then we'll take you to e-court, and then 5 months later we'll be in front of the e-court to possibly have them determine that you should turn the lights down. That's one example. Various noise things could be another one. That's also part of phase 2 of what we want to work with you on, of separating out the nuisance ordinance and the land development regulations a little bit more clearly. A third one could be some of the operational elements in the form-based code. We have certain standards that say that there need to be publicly accessible doors, for example. That could theoretically be used in that manner because it's much more of, somebody choosing to lock or unlock. Those are the kinds of things that could fall in there. It could also be, conceivably, somebody who's not keeping a site during construction, meeting the erosion control standards, not putting up the fencing, all these kinds of things that could be solved quickly at their end.
Does the administrative officer have to tell anybody else in the city that they're thinking about levying these penalties before they do it? Like, do they have to consult with you and or the city manager? The administrative officer is authorized by the city council to be a code enforcement officer. So just like a police officer is authorized to do that, that's part of your annual authorizations in March to do that. As a practical matter, we work on, we work collaboratively in the planning and zoning department, and we're not rash in the way that we take our actions. Thank you.
Any other questions? I did note that it also looks like our other fees where if you warn them and they say, and they change it right away, then it's only the fee is, or they say that they're not gonna take you to court. The fee is reduced. And I
Right.
know we have that with several others, so
Correct.
that's consistent and that makes sense to me. Are you, so you would like us to approve this?
If you're ready, we would love for you to do that.
Are you ready, or do you want to have more information, Tim, from other communities?
I'm good.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution establishing the zoning administrator fee schedule for ticketing of land development regulation violations.
So moved.
Okay, that's Tom. And is there a second?
Second.
That's Megan. Are you ready for the vote? Okay, I'll call the roll. Tom Chittenden,
Aye.
David Kaufman. Thumbs up. You don't have your voice on. Okay. Tim Barrett
Aye.
and Megan Emery.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that passes 5-0. So moving on to item 8. Consider and possibly approve a proclamation supporting Small Business Saturday in South Burlington 2020. This was something that I had received from the Small Business Saturday organization, I guess. And it sounded like it made sense to me. It's, I mean, you've all had a chance to read it. It basically is really encouraging, or we're stating our encouragement and support for the Small Business Saturday as a special day to do your holiday shopping. So that's what it is. And I added in the part, or asked Tom to add in the part about the pandemic as being a real driver for this. That's the second to last whereas. So Tom, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
So I'm sorry, I was gonna suggest that I fully support this. It's great. I love that we're doing this. Just the last therefore, I was wondering why we just pinned down November 28th, 2020 and not just establishing the Saturday after Thanksgiving as in the city of South Burlington as the Small Business Saturday.
Well, I think it's a national organization and I think they, you know, may have a different date at different weeks. I don't know. I was just using their template and trying to be a team player with all these communities around the country. Tim?
So I support this too. I'm just wondering why we wouldn't want to proclaim it as South Burlington Small Business Saturday, because I don't want people going to other towns and cities to shop. I want them just to come to South
Okay.
Burlington.
Well, that's okay.
Does that seem okay?
That seems perfect. That was the intent. Where would you put that?
Right where it says on the last now therefore, we do hereby proclaim that date as South Burlington Small Business Saturday. And then you get
Oh, so in the
SBS.
bold print where it says Small Business Saturday, put South Burlington?
Yeah.
Okay. Does everyone like that?
That'd be a great logo too, with SB SAT or something like that, you know, I mean.
Right. Okay. Is that amenable to everyone? Tom has a thumbs up. I do, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Megan, did you want to make a comment?
No.
Okay. All right, so that's a nice amendment. So Tim, do you want to amend? Did I take a, no, I didn't ask for a motion yet, did I? So why don't you move it with that additional language, Tim?
Sure, I'll move that we adopt the resolution to proclaim November 28th as South Burlington Small Business Saturday, with the small change on the now therefore that Small Business Saturday be actually called South Burlington Small Business Saturday.
Okay.
Second?
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thumbs up. This is not one of those things that's too important. I mean, too controversial. And I think it is very important. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. We are plugging through this, aren't we? It's not 7:30, so we can't do the interim bylaws. So let's move on to item 10. That's a posted hearing too. So we could go to item 11. Is that okay? August and September financials. So Tom?
Thanks, Helen. And if you want to leave some time before 7:30, Jessica could give a status of the IZ to you all before the hearing at 7:30. So if you wanted to plan accordingly, that could fit in.
How much time does Jessica need? Jessica?
Jessica does not need a full half hour, I don't think.
Okay. So it's 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think I was actually told 15 minutes, so I think.
Okay,
that's
good. All right. So 7:15, Tom we'll cut you off and or hopefully
Okay.
you'll finish. Okay. Thank you.
I can definitely be done before that. So the first quarter report for July, August, September, we're 25% of the way through the year. We're currently at 17% with our expenditures in the general fund and about 29% with our revenue. So we've collected to date. We have a number of annual assessments that have been paid out. Most of the initial bonded debt, partial payments are due.
Did he freeze for you?
Yeah, you froze for me.
Can't hear.
Let me tell him he froze.
Oh, that's right, because he can't hear us.
You froze, not me.
I just about froze this morning on my walk, but it was cold.
It's that time of the year, but it's going
Yeah.
to be in the 60s by Thursday, right through
know,
the
I
weekend
know.
to Monday.
But
Take the
unfortunately, all the
rest of the
candidates are going to be in pretty cold weather
Oh.
tomorrow.
Ouch.
Bundle up, Thomas.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm used to it, campaigning in city council weather in early March. Worse.
March.
I'm ready for it.
Well, at least he went off the air, so he knows.
All right.
You,
Should we move on to something else?
Let's
Maybe
go
we
to
could,
Jessica and come back to Tom.
okay. Jessica, are you all okay to move forward with your presentation while Tom tries to get his sound back?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, is that okay with you? I want to make sure you're available in case I misspeak here. Great. So the Planning Commission has been working diligently onward with our tasks for the planned unit development updates, as well as the associated items of the open space and environmental protection standards updates, and rewriting the subdivision and master plan language. So we had a joint meeting with you last February and only had one meeting before everything shut down for the virus. We did take 5 months off, kind of hoping that we'd be able to come back to meet in person with people. When we resumed in August, we dove right back in where we had left off. We've had 8 meetings since then dedicated to these items. So at this point, we've worked through the draft language for the natural resources, and it's very similar to the general overview that we had given you back in February. We have moved forward with the forested habitat blocks. We've made some changes to them in spots where we had some balancing, just to balance kind of competing city goals, like in the case where maybe there was something on the official map that conflicted, kind of things like that. We've also kind of moved forward with the other natural resources that we had talked about at that last meeting. And we're also considering adding some additional protections for the 500-year floodplain, which currently is not included. Our regulations include the 100-year floodplain. So we're considering expanding kind of our stream buffer regulations to include those areas. So we don't have that draft language yet, but we've kind of talked through our goals for those areas. We've been using a really great mapping tool that was put together with our staff as well as the CCRPC staff. And it's been really helpful to be able to kind of look at kind of how all these different areas layer together and kind of give us the big picture of the city. And you know, I think in general, staff has done a really amazing job of keeping us on track and providing us with information we need, as well as keeping us up to date with technology. We used they created a really great story map tool for us to use to evaluate some of these resources, which was really helpful. So I know that you seemed interested specifically in the natural resources, and if you were interested, we could kind of come back and give a more detailed presentation on where we've landed with all of those, if it would be helpful kind of before we have the whole package of everything. So, you know, I think that that's up to you if you wanted a more detailed kind of dive in on some of these details. As for some of the other items on the development side, we have in hand and reviewed draft language for the subdivision and master plan portions of the LDRs. And we've given feedback to staff on maybe a few adjustments on those. With the PUD, the planned unit development language, we've reviewed elements and outlines on the PUD items, and we're expecting draft language from the consultant in the next few meetings. So we would be able to, at that point, really kind of compile everything together and have one kind of larger draft of everything all in one spot. So that's what we're excited about. We have made a few big decisions related to the planned unit developments beyond where we had been the last time we met. And one of those things that I thought I would just point out is that we're looking at doing some changes to how we call it density at this point, like number of units per acre might be calculated, and kind of moving away from that number of unit approach to a building-based approach. So within a planned unit development, kind of specifying all the different elements that need to be there and the types of buildings, and then, you know, the person, the landowner would be able to kind of put all of those buildings in that remaining space. So it's really more about the context and the scale and the layout rather than number of units. And this is something we've talked about quite a bit about kind of scale. Like one very large building isn't really equivalent to one small building or home. So this is an approach that kind of starts to get at that that scale. And we'll be able to get more into like exactly what that looks like and how it affects development and what it looks like with the PUDs, but I wanted to at least kind of throw that out there, that it is kind of a different approach rather than number of units being kind of the deciding factor.
Is it related like to impervious surface, square
Kind of,
footage, or
yeah,
or something,
coverage, yeah. So
something
there's,
like that?
So there's different things where the types of streets and the size of blocks and some other parameters like size and height of buildings and types of buildings are all kind of specified within menus of choices. And then based on all of those individual elements, basically you're creating a neighborhood based on those building blocks within the ranges that we're kind of setting. So, you know, if you wound up with smaller units in a building of the same size, you know, it's just not unit based. It's more about like what it looks like and how it lays out. And we'll have some examples to be able to show you. And
Yeah, no, I'd be anxious, or I'd be curious to see what that looked like.
yeah, and maybe Paul can add a little more. I know I might have made that confused.
No, no,
I'm sorry, I don't want to get into the weeds. This is really a general conversation.
No, I just thought I'd just highlight it because I think it's a really exciting tool that really starts to look at some of our housing challenges that exist in the city. What's called the missing middle. You know, we're a classic community where for the most part, we've seen single families and two families, and then we've seen 30plexes, and we have seen, like many cities all around the country, very little in between. What a building-based approach does is that it assigns an area associated with each home that's sort of scalable to the size and to the type of home. So row homes necessarily have, you know, less yard space than single-family homes. Today, there's a disincentive to do anything like that because you can still only put 4 homes per acre in a given neighborhood. And so if you got your context right, which is the key part of this, then you might be able to put a duplex or a triplex or a small 4plex that looks like a single family home into a piece of land that isn't taking up the same amount of space as historically 4 single family homes would have. So it starts to focus more on how does it fit in with what's supposed to be around it, and how does it relate and sort of transition to what's been built in the past without sort of punishing neighborhoods that think about building either smaller homes or something a little bit more compact. Because right now, as we know, the land value is often the driving factor. And so if it makes no difference, larger homes can make up that return. Whereas if maybe you could get a couple of smaller ones in that same piece of land and have it be meet the context, then you might be able to get more housing in the same area and hit some better price points. So that's the thinking there.
Okay.
So we've been talking about our timeline, and I know that it's quite different than when we spoke last February. So we're expecting to have kind of our full draft and the initial kind of planning commission comments through like probably the end of this year at this point. I mean, we're just coming into November now. So by the end of the calendar year, and then, you know, it might take us a little while to kind of answer our internal questions and synthesize, and then some time in the winter to really make sure we're getting the public input and answering those public questions. So, I mean, I think we're looking at winter to have it in front of you. And I don't know exactly if that's February or, you know, plus or minus a month or something like that, but that is our goal. And with the pieces that we have done and what we're expecting and the kind of the feedback on what we've given the consultant back on the PUD piece, I think we're feeling pretty good about that.
Okay, and does that, once you have that sort of final draft, then you have your 2 public hearings, make whatever changes if you wish, and then it comes to the council for public hearing?
So
No?
the planning commission has one public hearing.
Just one, okay.
And we are allowed to make changes kind of after that. And then it comes to you.
Well, you've been hearing from the public all along, anyway.
We have, and
Right.
we've been thinking about how to really do this efficiently and transparently. And I know in the past, sometimes the public isn't clear like which version they should be commenting on. So one of the things we've kicked around is when we have kind of everything all together is to maybe warn that for public hearing. So it's very clear that this is the whole thing. This is what everyone's supposed to be commenting on, just to kind of set in stone. So all the comments that would be coming in at that point would be kind of in response to that kind of public hearing full version. So that was one thing that we had talked about. We hadn't made a final, we're not there yet, so we haven't made a final decision.
Okay.
Like that might be a good approach. So, we'd be kind of getting all of that feedback on the same version there.
Okay. I was just trying to think about it in terms of a timeline,
Yeah.
so at the latest, perhaps, sometime in February, you may have a final draft that the public could comment on.
Yeah, it could be sooner than that. I think the
Okay.
commission felt like, maybe January felt like maybe we didn't want to commit to that, but it felt like in that time frame.
Okay. And then that takes like 2 or 3 weeks to do that, right? To warn it, hear it, discuss it, respond with your final draft to then get sent to us.
Yeah.
Right? So we might not see it. If you need till February 10th or something, then we wouldn't necessarily be able to have a hearing until the end of February, the beginning of March. Is that, I mean, I don't, at this point, there's no sense in like rushing it, because it's a really big piece of work.
Yeah, so I think we want to make sure that our commissioners feel comfortable with how things are fitting together as a whole piece before pushing it out to the public. Like, so, if that means some extra meetings and we get into February or something, we want to make sure we're not putting out something that we haven't reviewed ourselves, I suppose.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think the council will want time to read through it and understand it as well.
Paul?
I would just add that the commission has received a lot of big picture feedback. It's been very helpful from the public. I know the commissioners and myself really appreciate it. There's some pretty substantial changes throughout the various chapters in here, and so the variable item that we can't quite predict is how much on the detail side of comments we may get from people who are users. And hopefully we've sewed things up pretty well for that. But if there's a significant amount of hopefully really good feedback on the detail items, then the commission will have to go through that, and staff will have to go through that. So that's a little bit of a variable piece, depending on how it, what we get as feedback.
But in terms of your process, and then I'll go to Megan, I'm sorry to monopolize this. In terms of your process, when you get down to those small issues, like this is what the language is going to say and how it works, in your planning commission meeting, anyone who is affected by that can speak then before it's more final, correct? I mean, they have lots of bites of the apple. It's not like that the final draft
Absolutely.
and then they're going to rewrite it because they've never seen this language.
Absolutely.
I hope.
It is true that we have been getting feedback all along, but we have also been clear that we're not at a kind of a full compiled version. So I know that there are members of the public who have been kind of paying attention, but kind of holding their comments for when they see how it fits together. And that has come up a few times. Like they, I know there's many people waiting for the version, like
Uh-huh.
the compiled version to provide comments.
Megan?
And you're going to hear the circle of life here. I'm sorry, my daughter refuses to practice before these meetings. I just wanted to know when the consultant was going to be back in touch with perhaps, proposed language, or when would that come before you so that all that would be public? Was that at the next meeting? Did I understand that correctly, that it was going to be?
Sure, Megan. So this last meeting, the Planning Commission received the full subdivision and master plan language. So that's available for public review. The consultant mid-month of this month is to deliver the planned unit development language to staff. Obviously, that means we need to do a little bit of back and forth, but the hope would be that the commission's first meeting in December is when they're seeing it. And that would obviously then also make it available to the public at that time.
So when will it be before the Planning Commission? Sorry.
So the planned unit development chapter, our hope would be the first meeting in December for the Planning Commission.
Oh.
Because we staff is to receive it later this month, and then obviously there's a little bit of back and forth there before we can send it out. But that's our hope and expectation at this point.
And then after you receive that feedback, what were the next steps? I'm trying to do the timeline in my head too.
Sure. So there's about 6 or 7 different pieces of this puzzle that all are coming together. So there's new subdivision standards, there's new natural resources standards, there's master plan, there's planned unit developments. And then as Jessica said, that then needs to tie into the updated street dimensions, the updated language around open space types, and then a lot of cleanup in the LDRs, getting rid of old stuff, which we've been doing all along, but we need to cross our T's and dot our I's on. In the past, planned unit development has been used in a lot of different ways. And so there's places all over the regulations where it says you must be a PUD in order to do this thing, because it was sort of used as a tool for a waiver before. So we've been going through and picking those out one by one. The commission hasn't seen all of that. That's sort of the last piece for them because it's largely housekeeping, but that's another piece of the puzzle that they need to see and see the whole thing together.
Okay. Tom, did you have your hand up? Oh,
was
okay.
easy.
Megan, are you done?
I guess so. I do hope that it can be, before the public for a public hearing in January. I think it would do the public, a service also for us to be able to move forward with these long-awaited regulations. So I know you've been at it a long, long time, and I encourage you to, at the same time that you think about the public process, think also of the timeliness of it. I think that's part of the calculation. So here we have an interim zoning hearing tonight on, a proposal that, we'll be considering with regard to, forthcoming regulations. So it seems that it would serve that public well too, to have those regulations in place.
Tom?
I think I heard in your comments, Jessica, separate from the public warning, the official required thing, an offer or a mention of possibly coming back to the council if it's convenient for you or Paul to go over the force blocks. I personally would love to get educated on that before it gets more finalized. So I certainly would be very interested in that. And if it doesn't need to be the full council, if there's ways that you would encourage me to get educated on that topic, I have interest.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that individually or as a group at one of your meetings. Because it is one piece that we've moved kind of along ahead of the other items, and it is new. So it might be nice for you to see it before it's kind of within the bigger package.
Would you be able to do that at our next meeting in November? Or is that pushing it too far? I don't know how far along you are with this. With the forest block.
I think so.
Well, or the first meeting in December. I mean, if you really.
Yeah, one of those, I don't have my calendar right here, so, but yeah, I'm happy to do that.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Or do you have anything else to add, Jessica?
Oh, I
Thank
guess,
you,
I
Paul.
guess one,
Oh.
I guess one other thing that we did talk about at our last meeting that I wanted to point out. I know at some point, maybe in February, there was a question if maybe we could adopt part of it ahead of some of the other pieces, and we did kind of as a group consider that just to, close the conversation and felt like we really want to have this as one package. It's so intertwined. To break off piece of it might be just so much extra work. So just that's.
Okay. Well, our first meeting in December, I believe, is the 7th. So that might be a good time to talk about the forest block right before we cut down our Christmas trees.
And I am available, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So let's see, we have 3 minutes. So I don't think Tom can get through too much in 3 minutes, although you could try.
I could probably finish that up. I apologize. My screen went
That's
out
okay.
for the second time here, so I'm gonna just keep my voice going and my
Okay.
picture off for a minute. I think I left off at taxes, and we're awaiting the local options tax allotment from the state the end of next week. The property taxes so far through the end of September have come in just under 40%, which is excellent. Much of the interfund transfers have not yet been made, so those are not reflected in the financials to date. The city clerk continues to bring in a pretty good income in recording fees, up to $75,000 already. So Donna's office continues to bring in that revenue as well, with the vital records that they continue to do as well. Really, all in all, it's what we expected. It's where we thought we'd be at this point. This is what we planned for. We're continuing to move forward with caution, with certain unknowns yet to be determined. And the enterprise funds both remain in good shape. We completed the data collection for the FY20 audit last week. The auditors were actually here on Thursday and Friday in person. We finished up with them. So they'll be preparing that audit. That will probably be delivered after the first of the year, late January or February meeting. And lastly, we'll have the October financials out for the next meeting, which will catch us up to date on the financial reporting so far for this year. So
Good.
about it, Helen.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom? Good. Okay, thank you. Well,
Thank you.
then we'll move on to item 9, which is the public hearing and a possible council action on the amendment and extension of the bylaws. And is Amanda here? I don't know if she's going to join us. I don't see her.
She will be joining if she's not on yet.
I
She'll be
don't
on
see her.
shortly, Helen.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess I need a motion to open the public hearing on the
So moved.
bylaws.
Yes, so moved.
By Megan, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tim. So we are now in an open hearing or a public hearing to consider extending the bylaws
Do
for
we
an
have to have a
additional
vote?
time period.
Vote
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by a thumbs up, I guess. Okay, that's 5 in favor. So we are have a public hearing on interim bylaws. Is Amanda here?
Helen, if
So
you
if
wanted,
I-
you could start with the public hearing part of it
Okay.
and get any
right.
feedback. Or if you'd like, I can give you a brief background on what the council's authority is. But I think you got that also last month, so.
Uh-huh, yeah, I don't know if we need that unless anyone would like him to go over it again. Okay, so why don't we open this up to the public? Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on extending the bylaws, the interim bylaw? Or interim zoning bylaw? Is there anyone? You just either turn your picture on or turn your mic on. Okay. Public must be supportive, huh? All right, can we talk about what the dates might be? Do we need to set a, or do we just extend it for a year with the understanding that we would end it as soon as we can?
So Amanda's recommendation would be that you, the statute's allowed to be in existence for one supplemental year, that you do so, and then you can repeal it any time. That's her recommendation.
Okay.
But as you did with your prior one, you have the authority to do shorter time periods as well.
Alrighty. Tom?
I'm supportive of a 3-month extension, but I don't think I'd vote to extend for the full year. I feel like what we just heard from Jessica is that they're coming to closure, and I think the 3 months are meaningful to all those involved. So I'm a yes on a 3-month extension, but I would not vote to support a full year extension.
So a 3-month extension would take it to December, January, February 13th. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We've been extending by quarters as we go along. I see no reason to deviate from that behavior.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
I
if
would
they're,
The only thing I'll say is 3 months with the holiday season right smack in the middle of it might be a challenge. And maybe not. We can go 3 months and then we can extend again if we need to. Let's just go 3 months. We've been doing it.
David, no one's going anywhere
That's very true.
for the holidays. So,
Are we ready for a motion on that, Helen?
So just to be clear, would this be to extend for up to 1 additional year in 3-month increments as you had done previously?
yeah, that probably makes sense. Does that meet your need, Tom?
That's okay.
So we would mirror the current language essentially.
Yes. So is that amenable? Do we have a motion to amend
I'll make
or,
that motion. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
and that, so it's made and seconded. Is there any further discussion by the public?
So
the
just
council?
point of
What?
procedure that you need to close the hearing first and then vote on the action.
Okay, but I
Wait,
want
Amanda's here. Does she want
Right.
to speak?
if there's anybody in the public who wants to speak, they need to speak before we close the public hearing. Amanda, did you hear what we just did, what the amendment is? To extend it for a year, in 3 month, up to a year in 3-month increments. So the first extension we'd have to deal with it, I guess, February 2nd. But it would end February 13th if we didn't extend it further.
So I'm sorry, I was having trouble logging in. So that's why I'm late. But
That's okay.
so in terms of I wasn't necessarily not expecting that the council would want to put it bluntly, keep the pressure on. But I'm just from a logistical standpoint, the 3-month increments, they don't end up being really 3-month increments just because there's a 3 to 4 week time requirement between when essentially the city council decides, oh, we're going to warn a hearing to extend the interim bylaws, then that has to be published in a newspaper, depending on when it falls, but it usually ends up being at least at least 2.5 weeks before. And so that's the only potential thing to keep in mind, just that if it's possible, I suppose, to consider a slightly different time pattern. So instead of 3 months, maybe 4 months, or even somewhat similar to the first time the council adopted this 2 years ago, an initial, say, 6-month period, and then, maybe a provision for a 3 or 4 month extension beyond that. So
Tom and then Tim.
So Amanda, you weren't on when Jessica was presenting, but they made the case that they're feeling like they're coming to closure. But I think you raised a good point that 3 months, and even with what they said, does seem like maybe a month short. And so I like using the same language that we used before, just to save you time with the 3-month increments. But if 4 months makes sense, and that's just changing one little number, that's not quarters, but that also seems reasonable to me. I'm just not amenable or supportive of extending for the full year tonight.
Tom, what about 6 months?
Does this planning commission need it? Because I didn't hear that, Paul, from Jessica or you. It seems like you're coming to that end, and I feel like if we give 6 months, Parkinson's law, people's work expands to as much time as you allocate to it. So I'm inclined for the 3 month to 4 months, but I could bite at 6.
Well, we could, if we did do it 6 months and they were completed and we had our public hearings and everything was adopted in 4.5 months, then we could end interim zoning early, correct?
that's correct.
We always have that.
That's always an option. That's correct.
The only thing I'll say is that if we go 6 months, it's likely to go 6 months. Not wanting to add stress to anybody's lives these days, but it seemed from listening to Jessica that 4 months might just do the job. And so I think I'd prefer to change, as Tom said, that one little number. Let's go 4 months, and we can always do it again. But I agree with Tom. If we go 6 months, we're probably going to go 6 months. 4 months doesn't really put pressure on. It just says we really want to get this done as soon as possible. And Jessica indicated that could be done. So I think let's go for the optimum and try for 4 months. That's my take.
Well, what do you say to that, Jessica?
My February didn't include the council sessions as well. And, February doesn't feel like we have it in front of you ready for public hearing in February.
I said 4 months would be mid-March.
Wouldn't it be mid-February?
That'd be 3. November 13th, December, January, February, March.
Is 4 months, yeah.
We're gonna try. I don't think we're gonna expand to answer that question. We're not gonna expand our work to fill your time you give us.
Right.
We really would
wouldn't
like
expect
to
you
get
would.
this completed.
Will 4 months work for you, do you think? You kind of.
She's hesitating. She's hesitating. I do go back to what Amanda said.
Then I'm fine with that. If you're uncomfortable with it, Jessica, not wanting to create undue stress at these times, I'm okay with 6 months, I suppose.
Megan and then Leo wants to speak. Megan?
Yeah, ideally, I would like to have it done now. It's not. This was the primary reason why we decided to go into interim zoning, and I would really like these regulations to be done. I really would like them to be done before a whole new cycle, begins next year. But I don't like playing, so close to time. And when I hear Jessica hesitating, I would rather say, let's just give 6 months and let's hope it's done by then.
Can we make it a hard 6 months? So like 6 months, this is done. We're ending interim zoning and it's all going to be wrapped up by then.
Well, we can always revote if we need to, right? But you're asking whether we want to try to make a hard stop. I understand that.
Trying to impress that upon them so as to, motivate so that the 6 months is not going to be extended again. But yeah, 6 months is fine. And then that's one more extension.
Let's go with that. Sure.
Well,
Leo Nato would like to speak.
thank
Leo?
you. Thank you. As a citizen, my concern is if you wait until 6 months, there's possibly going to be another problem that's going to surface, another committee that's not finished the report, whatever the case may be. Then that'll mean probably waiting another 6 months. Fairness to the public and the landowners, especially in the Southeast quadrant, is I think 4 months would probably be adequate. If Jessica and her team fail to comply at that time, then focus on extending it. But if you go 6 months and there's a reason to extend it again, you might as well say you're going to go a full year or beyond. So I just think 4 months would be more than adequate.
Thank you, Leo.
We can't go beyond a year.
Right.
Right, and I do want to, I understand the concern about, if the time is available, then, it takes that long, but the council can, so let's just say that, you adopt, limited in duration to 6 months from the date they become effective, but then, allow for subsequent 3 month periods. But let's say that before the 6 months, that things go remarkably smoothly. And if there are amendments that the council warns for a hearing, then depending on how that all plays out, it is possible for the council to coordinate the repeal of the interim bylaws with the introduction of proposed permanent bylaws. So,
Oh,
just-
so that wouldn't take another separate hearing. We could make it a whole package.
it would take another public hearing to repeal, but much like this, there's the decision to do that and then publish a warning, but then holding the public hearing like you are now and taking comment. But then you could take action to repeal it after you close the hearing on that during that meeting. But it just depends on what happens with proposed permanent bylaws, because there's also the possibility you want to be sure that the council is on board with all the proposed amendments before perhaps you repeal them. But I'm just saying that is an option instead of waiting whenever the time period is that you decide.
Well, I guess my feeling is I would just as soon go the 6 months, and I think Jessica has heard, and I think the planning commission is anxious to get this monkey off their back. They had a meeting every week in the last month, it seems. So they are putting their foot to the metal. And I think they understand that as soon as it's done and we have our hearing and approve whatever it is, then we'll end interim zoning. I don't think any of us want to keep dragging it on and throw in some more stuff to work on.
I just think it's important to acknowledge Leo Nato, my uncle's concerns. There are many landowners that really want this to be resolved. So I'm right now inclined to do the 6 months because we're in a pandemic. I didn't support going into interim zoning to begin with. We're in it and we had this pandemic while we're in it. So it seems like 6 months makes sense, but please, I hope we wrap it up before then. If not before, these landowners have rights and we need to recognize those and we need to give some clarity and get out of interim zoning.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I hope to get it done by then as well. So,
Let's have a motion.
So I'll move that we come out of the public hearing.
Second.
okay, all in favor? Thumbs up?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
And
so
I will amend my motion to 6 months with 3-month increments up to 1 year.
Okay.
Wait, so we're doing we're extending for 6 months or extending for,
We're extending it for 6 months with the option to have
2 more
3
3-month?
3-month
Okay,
extensions if
Up to
needed,
a-
or a 1-month extension. I mean, we could do anything we want.
Right.
In terms of the timing,
But that would
right,
make no,
right, Amanda? Pardon?
that would make no sense with the notices in the paper to have 1-month extensions, right? We'd be,
Well, right, no, but
But if, you know, the city council wouldn't have to extend it, say, for the full 3-month period if you were right there, or perhaps you extend it for the 3-month period, but then repeal it. So there.
Right. Okay. So that's the motion. Did I hear a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? And let me call the roll. Dave Kaufman,
Aye.
Tim Barrett,
Aye.
Tom Chittenden,
Aye.
Megan Emery,
I,
and the chair votes aye. So we have extended interim zoning for 6 months with the option of 2 additional 3-month periods. Unanimously. All right. Thank you very much. So now we have another public hearing. And this is, wait a minute. Let me get the language. So this is item 10, and this is an interim zoning application, IZ 2002 of the Eastern Development Corporation for development on this 8.66 lot at 600 Spear Street. So I need a motion to, is this a public hearing? No.
Helen, it is, but you're already in the public hearing, so you're just
Oh.
resuming it from 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
okay. Oh, all right.
So no action is
no need-
needed
okay.
to reopen it.
All right. So we are now, let's see, is Mr. Von Turkovich still? Yes, there's Frank. We had some additional questions you were going to answer, I think.
Sure. My understanding, oh, go ahead, Frank.
No, Paul, thank you. We were, made our presentation on the 19th to the city council. The next day on the 20th, we also brought the concept to the development review board. We had scheduled a sketch plan meeting with the board, and they were also very supportive and interested in our concept. What we're hoping to hear tonight is staff's comments, Paul's comments on where he thinks we're at with this, because if possible, we'd very much like to move forward.
Okay, Paul, do you have any comments?
Sure. So what was relayed to me from the last hearing and meeting was that the council wanted to get a little bit more of a flavor as to which of the PUD types this might fit under and what are some of the qualities of, to the extent that it is matching up. So this would be a small version of the PUD type, a traditional neighborhood, a TND, traditional neighborhood development. Typically, what the Planning Commission is looking at for those would be the scale of 10 acres in order to be a full-sized one, but they have also been giving us guidance on doing what's sort of a best fit version on smaller pieces of land. So this would be an example of a smaller piece of land. The characteristics in a traditional neighborhood is that it is focused principally on being residential. There is often some component of the neighborhood that would be non-residential. That doesn't necessarily mean commercial, but it would be non-residential. And in this case, there's an existing commercial building that Mr. Von Turkovich is looking to retain. I mentioned, and Jessica mentioned earlier about the new subdivision regulations. They really focus on creating a clear street pattern that has walkable scaled neighborhoods. And so what you see here is 2 north-south streets, an east-west street that start to form sort of a new version of a block. And so that's pretty consistent with that. The subdivision rules and the PUD rules would strongly encourage buildings to be facing onto the streets, which is what's happening here. And the other key component is to have a sort of a focal point to a neighborhood, a open space, what we're calling civic space, that becomes an area where neighbors get to know one another better. We have them in some of our neighborhoods historically. We haven't had them in some of the more recent ones. But here, Mr. Von Turkovich has laid out, it doesn't show entirely in this drawing, but the square that's sort of right in the middle there is proposed as a civic space, which really becomes it's accessible to all the people who live in all the units. There's sidewalks, and so that's meeting that objective there. And then the other remaining piece of the puzzle that the Planning Commission is working on is exactly how to get what the building forms would be. It is very likely that something that is a triplex in row homes would be absolutely one of them. There is in this property also an existing single family home, so there's a little bit of diversity there. So at the scale of the City Council's review, I would say that this is Mr. Von Turkovich and his staff and his team have worked pretty closely with us to have this get pretty close to where the commission is with the traditional neighborhood.
Can I ask, at our last meeting, we did, I can't remember, I think it was Tim, asked about one of those little blinking lights to cross Spear Street. And you said, well, yes, if that was indicated or something, that you would support that. And I'm just wondering if we could include that in part of, or if you would include that in part of the plan, just because I think it really enhances the walkability and addresses some of the things you're trying to accomplish. And that would be great, because then it would be part of your development. I mean, I don't know if you need to have, I guess, the Public Works okay it. You probably do, but they have to okay a whole lot of stuff that you're building in here.
Right. No, that would be great. We would enthusiastically support permission to do that. That would be great.
That'd be good. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from council members that Frank can address? Tim?
Hi, could you talk about the energy aspect of the development again? I know there was reference to some solar and net zero, and I was wondering if you intended to exceed the Act 250 stretch code, and if so, how you would do that, and whether you're going to heat and cool with heat pumps or natural gas.
Right. No, that's a great topic for us. We have the opportunity on this site to put in a substantial enough solar to probably bring the entire project to a net zero status. You're familiar by looking at the photos, the steel building that we'd like to retain, that is a relatively low roof pitch, and the ridge runs north and south. We think we can probably get solar on both sides of that roof, and that would generate a substantial amount of energy right there. Certainly enough for whatever's going to go on inside the building once we talk to the city about what those uses might be. But the homes themselves, we would plan on installing enough solar to meet the power requirements for all the buildings. And yes, indeed, we would use air-to-air heat pumps, which we have started to do on some of our smaller buildings, install air-to-air heat pumps, and they're great. I think some of you folks probably have them and have neighbors that do. They're really terrific. They're super energy efficient. They're quiet. They're reliable. They're relatively affordable today. I think that is what we're going to see a lot more of in the future. So we would definitely make that move. And in terms of compliance with the Act 250 stretch requirements, we would meet those requirements. And I think we haven't really gotten into the architectural design phase yet so that we can pinpoint specifics, but we plan to keep this project and would like it to operate as low cost as possible.
How would you, so, I mean, do you have an idea about how your solar system would work with GMP? Would it be net metered, and, you know, the development property management company would be this, you know, the owner of that solar system, and then you would, I mean, I don't know what's possible today and what limits there are with companies and residential communities like this with solar. Are there any limitations to what you can do?
There are limitations for sort of a merchant solar plant. A lot of the possibilities for doing that have changed over the past few years. The programs are still there, but they're limited. Our ability to produce and use on-site solar is still practically unlimited. We can do a net meter project to feed into our own buildings, basically. I mean, it really goes into the grid, but it comes back to us as a direct production credit. And I think it would be really remarkable to be able to do that. We're real excited about the idea of having it be probably totally net zero on an electric basis. We have natural gas on site. I'm not sure that we'll need to bring it in because we'd like to use small instantaneous hot water heaters that would be located near the bathrooms and the kitchens. That would also save on a project this size, just avoiding the human mistake that we all make of just running the water till it gets hot. Having a feature like that built into a new building can save thousands and thousands of gallons a year in water. And in the future, that's going to be a big deal.
Mhm.
So we're looking at ideas like that to make it energy efficient beyond just electric and gas.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? I would just say I really liked the idea of in the large building when you, and I understand nothing's firm because you really have to think through, but I thought the concept of having a workplace for someone, a small office or whatever they call them, you know, it's sort of like a joint thing, and I guess it would be driven by who you rent to, but it also might be a wonderful marketing aspect. But that appealed to me, to use that in a kind of creative way so that people really can work, live near where they work and not have to necessarily use one of the bedrooms as an office. I mean, they
Right.
could have this option, obviously for a rental piece, but it still would be, you know, for those new and up and coming entrepreneurs. I mean, they won't live here forever, but this would be a great place to get started. And how cool
thanks.
to be promoting that.
We agree. It's an opportunity that none of us saw coming 6 months ago, but here it is. And repurposing that building so that it's so that it really contributes to this little neighborhood we're planning on building would be a great opportunity, great thing for us to do.
I would agree. Any other questions or comments? So what we need to do is
We could close the hearing,
close the hearing and then
take 45 days
to make a decision. Okay,
or less,
yeah.
or fewer.
So are you ready to close the meeting?
I move that we close this hearing.
Hearing. Okay,
I can
Second.
second that.
and it's seconded by Tom. So any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, signify by, you can do a thumbs up, I guess.
Aye.
Okay, that's 5-0. So the hearing is closed. And I guess do you want to have a discussion now or think about it some more?
I'm ready now to vote on it.
Okay,
Tim, you could give staff direction. We don't have a written
That's right, you don't
decision
have a
for you.
draft. Yeah.
But if you wanted to give us broad direction, we'd be happy to prepare one for you to consider for your next meeting.
Do you want that direction now?
sure.
I'm happy to take it if you all want to give it.
Well, personally, I would, I would give broad direction to you in an affirmative for this project.
Thanks.
From a city council perspective during interim zoning.
Okay,
Does everybody agree with that?
yeah, I do. I would love to have the crosswalk part incorporated, and Frank said he would, so.
Yeah.
Megan?
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
I really, I appreciate the design and the thoughtfulness. They approach to net zero. It does seem walkable. The scale seems just about right. It achieves like a village context in that parcel of land. There's enough buffering for the interstate and as well as vegetation to, keep the noise down from there. And, it's basically, it's a rural area. It really is, with UVM's land on every side. And I think that would be a desirable place to live for some people. So we need housing. We need housing like that.
Right. I think it's very creative, and you've identified some other goals of the city that you incorporated, and I hope developers continue to think in this way.
I would just like to ask Paul what the traditional neighborhood development would allow with regard to the remainder of the parcel to the east there.
There is a little bit more space to the east that there could conceivably, a neighborhood like this could probably form another block, sort of like the first one. Fairly shortly after that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Frank, but there's a class 2 wetland that comes in pretty quickly after that. And then there's the interstate buffer. So there is a little bit more space that in a traditional neighborhood could conceivably have been done, but I believe that this is essentially maximizing the current density allowance.
That's correct. That's correct. But Megan, we will keep our eye on the regulations as they evolve. And as Paul said, the project does have the potential to expand further if that proves to be possible with future regulations.
And it looks like some of the preliminary work is being done to allow that to happen. With regard to the parking, the roads, I would think underground as well.
That would all be connectable easily, yes.
And then remind me, looking at this picture, I mean, at some point you're going to bump into the solar array, are you not?
Yes, that is to be determined as to when and how that will go in, but it would be to the east of the project and along in between the project and the interstate. So we'll see how that fits in.
Okay.
One last question.
Yes.
Will there be bicycle racks outside, or will it be mostly for storage for people inside between the buildings or in the foyers or?
Right. Great question. There are a few things that have evolved since we actually talked to you on the 19th. One idea, to answer your question about bike racks, each building would have the what we call the breezeway between the two halves of the building to get to the backyards. There would be dedicated bike racks inside that covered space. And those would be for the residents of the buildings, for the 4 apartments that are in those buildings. So, and the buildings will be built on slabs, on concrete slabs on frost walls. So the bike storage area would be on these concrete walkways between the buildings, and we would envision installing galvanized bike rack kind of posts, so you can bring your 2 bikes in for your apartment, lock them up to keep them safe. And we would also have dedicated charging outlets there for e-bikes. So people that are getting into that, which I think is great. So you could charge your e-bike there underneath your unit, and that electricity would be provided by the project. It wouldn't be connected to each apartment. It would just be there for the tenants to use. So those are 2 features that would keep your bike inside, out of the rain, out of the snow, and we probably wouldn't need more than just a few visitor bike racks in a few places just to let people to come in and park their own bikes.
Yeah, that's good to hear that there would be, a galvanized steel anchor in a cement pad, because, reading Front Porch Forum for the last year, it seems like there have been at least 3 or 4 bikes stolen from carports at certain condo complexes. And I feel so bad because people, they lock them up to something in the carport, or they thought, who's going to go in a carport, and then somebody steals their bike. So, but you brought up a good point about charging, and I don't want to drag this out, but do you have plans for charging stations for automobiles in that complex?
We haven't shown anything on the plan yet, but definitely we would provide automobile charging stations. That's here already. We would definitely like that to be a feature of the project. So that's certainly a feature that will be in the project. And one other point that your question prompted me to want to remember to tell you this, that in the steel building where we intend to build some storage areas for tenants, and a shop space that you could use for working on your bike or your ski equipment or whatever you might want to use it for. Today, we all know about the problem with Amazon and FedEx deliveries and how big of a pain that can be when you're not home and stuff gets left out. If you provide an enclosed safe space, the delivery companies, Amazon and FedEx, will actually pay to install these locker systems that are accessible to the tenants, and they're safe, they're enclosed, they're easy to service, and it keeps the packages off the street. So we would intend to provide that as well. A lot of uses for that steel building that we're seeing now as being possible.
You're gonna have to make it bigger.
The future city street extension to the north of the project, what is that?
Well, one of the features that we discussed with staff was that the project should provide for another street connection to the north and the south. So that street that you see there, Megan, is intended to be a dedicated city street that will allow access to the UVM parcels that are north and south of us. It would just take local traffic off of Spear Street for the future. And it would allow people to interconnect without having to go back out onto Spear.
I mean, this is the same thing they did on Link Road and also on Sadie Lane, kind of like planning for the future. When somebody's empty meadow could turn into another development in the future, you might as well have the street, right up to the edge of the property line and ready to go when the next one comes up.
Right.
My last comment about car charging stations is that I don't know how your property management would deal with this, but I've met people that live in rental units and they have rechargeable, they have EVs, and they complain a lot because they don't have access in some of the older developments. So however the new ones go in and how many ever there are, it would be really cool if there was an agreement among the people that use them, and if the technology for that charging station, like with ChargePoint or something, could organize the charging so that it was, allocated to people over a period of time and would do things like email them and tell them to move their car when it's done, when there are more cars than there are charging stations, things like that. I mean, you don't want every spot doesn't have to have a charger,
No.
but you're probably going to have at some point more EVs there than you will have chargers. So like
Yeah.
for where I work in our Malta plant, they have that organized in that way so that you have to register in order to be able to use the charging station. If you do use it, then it emails you when you're done and you have to go move the car.
Right.
Or they start yelling at you. They call you and they say, move your car because somebody else wants to get in there, you know. But
Yeah,
that could
it's,
all change as the range of these vehicles increases and people might be charging somewhere else. I don't know.
Yes. No, I think it is that is no longer just a future concept, Tim. I really think that is today. And if we build this project, hopefully, you know, in the next year or two, it would be a major component. I wouldn't do it without that being included.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul, do you need any more direction? Okay,
I think I'm all set. I will, staff will prepare a draft decision for you to consider in the very near future.
okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Frank.
Hey, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So moving on, we've done item 11, we go to 12, which is a continued discussion regarding the FY22 budget. So Paul, Tom, are you gonna read that?
I'm back on audio here. Again, I apologize for the video. I think
No, it's fine.
what we're looking for, I guess, at this point, Helen, is as we meet with department managers to talk about putting the FY22 general fund budget together. Is the council of the opinion that in terms of the capital improvement plan, we should be seeking items that are essential only, must-have items that we're looking for FY22 as compared to items that they may need to have. They may need to have them, but not necessarily next year. So the CIP is kind of laid out as a 10-year plan so that things are spaced in a way so that there's not a significant increase in any one year, but more of a gradual or a consistent kind of increase over the 10 years. So we've kind of given guidance at this point for them to come to us with items that they absolutely feel they have to have.
I think that makes sense. Since we don't really know what's going to happen, it probably isn't going to be a full-blown open economy in the next fiscal year. I mean, hopefully toward the end of it, it will be, but that won't allow us to go full bore ahead on our CIP. So I think you start with the absolute minimum and then maybe you identify if things get better, this would be the next, capital expenditure. I personally, I think we need to do that with the budgets as well. I mean, really look at a very, very small increase.
Increase?
Well, yeah, I mean.
Well, if you hold everything else the same, health benefits will cause an increase, period.
Right. So, Tom?
If I recall, the year before I joined council in 2014, I feel like we level funded the budget. I know, Tom, you looked for guidance from us in these about this time every year for the past 5 years, and we've given you like that upward bounds of 3%. I like what you stated, and I personally, looking at the uncertainty and all the pressures on us, I would love to see if we could shoot for a level funded budget with no increase this year. But I know I might be getting ahead of myself with this statement, but I think that gives you charge for what I think you were looking for by asking us about our current impressions on this SIP, the absolute required components and nothing more. Anything else that can be pushed off sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, the only problem I have, Tom, I was on the council when we did a zero budget and it sounded great. And then the next year we had to bump it up. I think it was 5 or 6 because it was really too drastic. There was stuff that you just had to do, and we hadn't budgeted for that. So I think that's like a great goal, but I think it's kind of unrealistic in terms of a city that has, residents who are expecting a certain level of service and items provided them. I mean, just healthcare.
I'm not
That
making,
goes up 5%, you're sort of screwed. What do you do? Do you fire some people?
so I'm not making the case tonight that we shoot for a level funded target. What I'm saying is many people are not getting raises this year. If anything, they're seeing pay
Right.
cuts. So us doing our best to do as bare minimum as possible for next year, which I think is what Tom Hubbard's statement or question to us was. I fully support that. So let's do the absolute required amount of capital improvement and nothing more, so as to shoot for the least possible tax increase, and possibly, if it's in the cards, which we haven't really seen the cards yet, a level funded budget would be appealing to me.
Other comments?
I have a question about the financial warrant that we were given for this meeting for Tom, if this is a good time, or we can wait till the next agenda item.
I'm good, Tim.
Can you comment on the four Marathon Health expenditures that were, I know it's for the new clinic, right?
It is. So those are
But
the
they all
monthly
say-
charges.
They all say July. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it should be July, August, September, October.
Okay.
So they're once a month charges, and then we'll get paid by the partners. So there's a revenue component to that as well. So that whole fee we pay out, and then we get the reimbursement from the other partners, so that we're still paying our share.
And the costs seem to go up by month. Is there a reason for that?
Well, then it went down. It went up, and then the last month, I think, is a little bit lower, as I recall.
Yeah, the cost that stays constant is the lease. The cost that will vary a little bit are the services provided within that month. So that may go up or down on any given month. And we've just added the counseling service to that as well. So.
And
So do we, go ahead, Megan.
did you say that other participants, that they're billed directly, or do we get billed directly and other participants pay us? I was just curious.
Yeah, so we pay the cost up front,
Mhm.
and then we have a third party that actually does the billing on our behalf. And then we get the revenue back to offset the majority of that cost, so that we still pay our share, but it's not the full cost that you're seeing there. But the only thing that varies month to month is the service.
We'll have an accounting from time to time, just like we do for
Yes, in
the
fact,
community.
As we talk about some of the other agenda items coming up, we're going to have Coralie come in and give you kind of an overview of the clinic and how that's working. Maybe even, if not the next meeting, the first one in December, either way.
But Tom, are you satisfied so far with how it's working, and if it is a valuable thing?
I'd say very satisfied, Tim. We've gotten really good comments from employees. We've gotten great usage, and just adding the counseling component right now has been very well received. So we are very pleased, and we hope that this is going to be reflected in our healthcare costs. That's the goal.
Is the counseling part in addition to what they could get from the employee assistance plan, or are those just two? I mean, they're two separate things, but the question is, could you decrease your EAP costs if they had a separate charge for a counseling segment, and you could just not buy that anymore, or do you have to take the whole package with EAP?
We could, Tim. It might decrease it a little bit. The EAP package for the year with us is a total of $6,000.
No, it's
So
not
they,
very much.
they offer so many other services in addition to that, that it's well worth the $6,000
Oh.
for that.
I agree. Okay, good, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions for Tom? Does that sound reasonable to really go for absolute minimum on, or absolutely essential projects for the CIP, and then, really be very, very, very careful with the budget? And will that include not filling, well, you don't know yet, do you? Because we haven't filled vacancies now, so that probably will continue, not filling them.
But those are at least built into the budget, so the money exists. So if it did present an opportunity to fill those, maybe come next April, we could look at that. At least if the money's there and it's not needed to be used to make up for a revenue shortfall somewhere else. That's one of the unknowns that we just gotta wait and see. But
All
this
right.
is helpful. This
Can't
is helpful.
replace the tires until you can see Lincoln's hair.
I had a good sense that this is where the council was at, so this has been helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
You always have a good sense, Tom. Thanks.
Yeah, he's very sensible.
Dollars and cents. Dollars and cents.
Okay, dollars and sensible, right. Item 13, other business. We have one item, well, there's already one on it, upcoming agenda items, but why don't we deal with Tom's first? And he wanted some resolution, or I'm not
So-
sure what it is you want about the comments of,
Yeah, can I just frame it real quick? So
Sure.
it's not a warned item, so I just want to put something into the public arena. So at the last meeting during public comment, a resident, Michael Donahue, raised a concern about a possible open meeting violation. And then we said we would address it in the later item, agenda 7. It was brought to my attention that we never actually did. And there was an article in the other paper that week. What did happen, and this is what I wanted to put into the public domain, is an email from Kevin Dorn was sent to the council the day after. And Kevin Dorn stated that the claim that we had violated open meeting law through the use of email is wrong, and he stated that there is an exemption in the law for administrative actions. So he's informing us, so that's basically said under the administrative actions portions of the law. So that's the advice we have been given from the council, or sorry, from our city manager to the council regarding the open meetings law claim. So this is not a warrant item, but I just wanted to use other business to put that into the public dialogue.
okay, thank you. Additional upcoming items for council meetings. We want to hear from Jessica with an update on the forest blocks. What are some other items that you would like presented?
I think you may hear from Alan Strong on the South Burlington Land Trust's current thinking for funding purchases of identified lands that should be conserved or preserved. He was going to contact you, Helen, and ask for a discussion on a council agenda coming up.
Okay, good to know. Any other items that people have thought about or think we should add to the agenda stuff, sort of comes up? Yes, Tom.
So something we did, we haven't done in the last 2 years that I recall, maybe we did, and I'm just getting old, but I would certainly, depending on the outcome tomorrow, regardless of the outcome tomorrow, we had legislative breakfasts and sessions in November, December, so that we could have the council as well as the school board weigh in on the people going down to Montpelier. I think scheduling a Zoom with all of the legislators, including the state senators, on matters sometime in December, that's been useful in the past, and I know I certainly would appreciate it. Having South Burlington, Kevin Dorn, Tom Hubbard, our leaders impress upon our legislators what they want to see accomplished in the coming biennium.
Okay. Good enough. I think that always makes sense. Tim?
Maybe we can save this for the steering committee meeting, but does city council want to have a discussion amongst ourselves and the public, of course, about the police department and their school resource officers, and whether we want to fund those positions for those officers to go into the schools. I know the school is having the discussion now about whether they want to have SROs or not. But I mean, it's a two-way street. The school can think about whether they want them, but the city council can think about whether they want to make them available at all. Maybe we can wait for the steering committee on that. But I think it's a discussion worth having, especially from the city side, you know, city councils and their directive to the police department, because I think we're the ones that, you know, if we hold the purse strings, we could say, we're not going to fund SRO anymore, you know, and I think it's just something we should talk about.
I'm not even sure we fund it, but we have a set number of employees to do all the work. So if this is a segment of their work, then they, you know, can't do something else. So that, I think that's the conversation, because I'm pretty sure Tom Hubbard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the school pays for the SROs, don't they?
That's completely funded by the city.
Oh, it is. Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I thought the school did. Huh. Okay. Well, that's, I mean, that's certainly a good steering committee. My battery is going dead. That's certainly a steering committee topic.
Do other councilors agree with me? Megan, you think that's a good idea to have that discussion?
Looking for my mic. Yeah, I think that everything is on the table when we're talking about potentially, you know, looking at deficits coming ahead. You know, we have to really prioritize, and that's something that you know, both the school and we have something, you know, to say about it. So yeah, I think it's worthy of discussion. I have to say, Helen, I can't think of things that come up. We've had a real heavy schedule over the past few years.
Yeah. Well, I'm drawing a blank too.
I think we've done good work. I mean, there are always things that can be done. So, you know, that's for sure.
We do have some things already set for the agenda. So for the meeting coming up on the 16th, we have the leases coming forward from Common Roots. The Recreation Park Committee has had a chance to review those, and I think even the Dog Park Committee has weighed in on that. We have Amanda and Paul coming back to talk about sewer capacity. We have Green Mountain Transit Annual Report, the Winooski Valley Park District Annual Report. Paul's going to fill you in on his conversation with CCRPC about climate change. And Justin's going to come in and talk about short and long-term plans for the bridge over Kimball Avenue, as well as an update on the dog park.
And what about the traffic signals on Dorset Street? When are we going to get to that?
And I'll add that to the list while he's here, Tim.
Okay.
Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like we have plenty to talk about, so.
Yeah, it sounds for a lot of issues. So I
Yeah,
don't
the
think we
Kimball
need any
Avenue
more.
Bridge. I'd be eager to know about the Kimball Avenue Bridge because it's already breaking up.
Right.
It is, I think.
Very-
they're gonna
Yeah,
have
it was
to-
like 2
they're gonna have
weeks.
to
I
scrape it
rode
right.
my bike over it, and it was just, I mean, one lane is just sort of like starting to just, but I mean, what do you expect? It's metal plates, they vibrate, and the asphalt just
Right.
comes right off. So,
Exactly.
you know,
Well, and they're doing all sorts of construction at Technology Park.
Right.
yeah, oh yeah, more trucks than you've ever
You
imagined.
know,
are
it's
gonna
more
go over that
trucks
bridge.
than normal, so of course it's
Just
yeah.
wait till FedEx opens that place up.
exactly. Well, hopefully the new bridge will be done. Okay, so it sounds like we probably don't need any more items to add to the agenda, but if people have something, you can always let me know or bring it up under other business for our consideration. David?
Yeah, I think it speaks pretty well of the work we've done, that we're at a point where we're not feeling tremendous pressure right now. We've gotten a lot done. The city center project, that took many meetings and a lot of discussion. And heck, it's going to open this spring. I think that's awesome. So I think we've done an awful lot. That probably being the most visible. and we've made good stuff happen. So we don't have to have a jam-packed, stressful schedule every month, you know? I think
No, you know, tonight we're just about done and it's 8:30.
that's good. Dinner time.
Yeah.
One last thing for agenda item is can we get a small update from Snyder Braverman on what's planned next for City Center in terms of Garden Street completion and the connector over to Midas Drive and other new buildings and what their schedules are like.
Right.
Yeah,
Paul?
that wouldn't be bad at all.
Tim, I can tell you that today we issued an approval for the latest building,
Oh.
which is immediately adjacent to the Champlain Housing Trust, closer towards Al's French Fries. So on the
Oh,
same
great.
side of Garden Street, a 40-unit building, largely affordable housing in there.
Nice. Great.
But it's not CHT.
Not CHT, not to my knowledge. We're looking at the project as
Okay.
as a project. So
That's great.
yeah.
Good. So if there's further update or anyone else who owns any of the land in there wants to do something, we'd love to hear. All right, is there any other business to come before us? Okay. Motion to adjourn
So moved.
and seconded and all in favor? Aye. Well, good
Aye.
meeting,
Aye.
gang. We got a lot done, it seems. Moving along. I hope
8:30.
everyone is managing
Goodness.
their full-time employment along with this. I don't know how you do it because I can hardly do it and don't have a job. So.
I like to be busy.
Obviously.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank